Why is there a voicemail of the president talking to his son about his overseas business dealings if the president has said he's never spoken to his son about his overseas business dealings?
New CNN reporting this morning about an overwhelming sense of frustration among Democrats over what is being described as mismanagement inside the Biden administration.
Are you compromising safety with a pilot older than 65? Because a lot of people say 65 is the new 55, and we have a president who's almost 80.
I'm sorry for not warning you on that last one. We'll get to that clip later on in the show. President Biden in some new hot water with more Hunter Biden drama, airline chaos. Democrats are not happy with the White House. The president is suing Arizona. Holy cow, there's a ton to get to today. Thanks so much for tuning into Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go.
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is July 6th, the year of our Lord 2022. If you haven't gotten to the new you in 22, it's not going to happen. We're 6 months in. New you in 22 is long past. But a lot of news to get to, specifically around the fact that the White House finally did a press conference. Remember when the White House was talking about, or the press and the media was like, oh, Donald Trump never talks to the media or doesn't ever do press conferences. So the problem with that argument was the fact that Donald Trump, anytime he was headed to Air Force One, getting on the Marine One chopper, he would stop and talk to the press for like an hour. But apparently, the Biden administration is not held to the same standard. Who would have thought? KJP, I think I got her acronym right, the Karine Jean-Pierre, has not given a press conference, I believe, since June 28th. It is now July 6th. And sorry, it was July 5th yesterday when she finally gave one, and was faced with a lot of questions that happened over the course of the last week. Now, we couldn't get to all of them today, so I wanted to focus on this specific thing that leaked. Is it leaked? I don't know if it's leaked technically. I don't know if that's the correct term, but the Joe Biden voicemail that we talked about yesterday, where he clearly knows what's going on with Hunter Biden's business dealings. The White House press secretary was finally asked about that because, again, they've been unavailable for the last several days. Here is a clip. So before we get to the White House press secretary talking about that, this is a montage put together this is a much longer montage. These are snippets of this montage talking about how Joe Biden definitely knew what Hunter was doing in his overseas businesses. I feel like that's really not even a question. So here's this. Watch this clip before we get to the White House press secretary. Also, I see a couple thousand of you watching it. Really, really appreciate you checking out the show and tuning in. If you wouldn't mind, just engage somehow, give a comment, hit the little like or angry button or the laughing button, whatever you think is appropriate. If you feel so inclined, feel free to share that right just down here, especially on Facebook. Watch this montage of the media uncovering the fact that 100% Joe Biden knew what Hunter was doing. And then I believe at the end, we have a clip of Joe Biden denying it all while on the campaign trail. Check this out.
His son, Hunter, joining the then vice president on the official visit to Beijing. Unknown to the press back then, Hunter Biden was forming a Chinese private equity fund, planning to raise money, including from Chinese investors. 10 days after the Biden's trip, Shanghai authorities issued the fund's business license.
Then Vice President Joe Biden had dinner with his son Hunter, along with Hunter's business associates from Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan. And the day after the dinner, a Burisma executive sent a note to Hunter, quoting, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together."
Chinese executives admitted to reporters that they were actually introduced to the vice president by Hunter Biden.
Hunter and the then vice president seen with a pair of Mexican billionaires. At the same time, Hunter had been working on energy deals in Mexico.
Joe Biden also had Hunter and his business partner fly on Air Force Two to Mexico.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
Okay, so all of that stuff made it pretty obvious, but it was all kind of circumstantial at the time. There was also the emails that said H is going to hold 10 for the big guy. We all know who the big guy definitely is. There was also Tony Bobolinsky testimony, which, by the way, nobody has discredited Tony Bobolinsky. If you remember him, he was the business dealing guy with Hunter who went out publicly and said, hey, this is definitely all happening. But there wasn't really any concrete way to tie the fact that Joe Biden actually knew. There's a bunch of circumstantial stuff until last week when that voicemail that we played yesterday of Hunter getting a message from Joe saying, hey, saw that New York Times and the article in the New York Times. It looks like you're clear. Those are the biggest words in that voicemail. So regarding that voicemail, this is the first time the White House has been, since the voicemail was released by the Daily Mail last week, this is the first time that the White House has been confronted with a question about it. This is Peter Doocy, and there's going to be another clip that we're going to play after this, but this is, again, Peter Doocy. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, Peter Doocy's from Fox News. He's going to ask this hard-hitting question. But just stay tuned and watch the next one after Peter's question. Check this out.
Why is there a voicemail of the president talking to his son about his overseas business dealings if the president has said he's never spoken to his son about his overseas business dealings?
Well, first I'll say that what the president said stands. So if that's what the president said, that is what stands. And secondly,
about a New York Times article concerning Hunter Biden's business dealings, and he says, I think you're clear. How is that not him talking to his son about his overseas business dealings?
We're not, from this podium, I am not going to talk about alleged materials from the laptop.
So are you disputing the president's voice on the voicemail?
I am not going to talk about alleged materials on the laptop.
Are
it's
you
not happening
then that it is not?
Peter, I refer you to his son's representative.
Okay, so that is avoiding the question. Now, just can we break for a second to talk about the fact that KJP is not very good at this job. Now, you probably all disagree with Jen Psaki. She made me furious so much of the time, but she was good at what the job asked of her. When Jen Psaki was up there, she could spin questions very, very well. Again, she was lying and wrong about them, but the way that she would have answered that question would have been much more, I don't know, she would have said something along the lines of, look, we're not here to talk about allegations. Then she would spin off into something else. The president said this and this and this and this. KJP, though, is not up to the job at hand, which for some reason is lying to the media. Think about that. The taxpayers pay someone on behalf of the president that we all elect to lie to us. That's their whole job. Weird. It's a weird dynamic. But Peter Doocy was not the only person that asked the question. Here's another reporter. I couldn't figure out who it was or where they were asking from, asking or giving a follow-up saying, hey, you just completely dodged this very legitimate question. Why? Again, if you're watching this right now, would really, really appreciate just clicking the little like emoji, whatever the emoji that makes you feel, or give a comment. Anything you can do to engage with the post really, really does help us out, continue doing what we're doing. So really, really appreciate if you could hit that up really quick. Without further ado, here's another follow-up with the White House press secretary asking, hey, why didn't you cover this?
We have all heard it. The president likes to say, I will always level with you. He says it again and again. Moments ago, though, you seemed to dismiss Peter's question about his conversation with his son, Hunter Biden, with regards to his business dealings. And I'm wondering, how is that silence consistent with the president's promise to always level with the American public? Because, in public, he says he hasn't discussed these business dealings. And then, at least according to the voicemail that's been obtained by the Daily Mail and Washington Examiner, it certainly seems like he was seeking to do exactly that, have a conversation about these business dealings. Is he leveling with the American public on this?
Phil, I hear your question, but what I can tell you from here, standing at this podium, is that I cannot comment on any materials from the laptop. And I would refer you to the representatives of Hunter Biden. That's what I can share with you at this podium at this time.
So here's the problem with that, is that they've been able to scapegoat Hunter. I would refer you to Hunter's representatives for a long time, but now that there's a voicemail, and Peter Doocy hit on it a little bit earlier, unless you're going to say, no, that wasn't Joe Biden, it definitely was Joe Biden. Unless you're going to say that, no, that wasn't Joe Biden, he is now involved. So that tactic isn't going to work anymore. I want to stay on the White House here for a little bit. This is, you know what, let's go with this first, because actually this is a big deal, I think. The president of the United States, the Biden administration, is suing the state of Arizona over its voter ID laws. So remember, I usually use opportunities like this to play what I think is the worst thing a president has ever said, which was when the Georgia laws were getting passed. Oh, you have to show an ID to vote. What a novel idea. You have to be a citizen to be able to vote. So maybe you should have to prove that you're a citizen and able to vote, if you're able to vote. The president then came out and said, this is worse than Jim Crow on steroids. So, okay, what he effectively said was black people being hunted down and sometimes even lynched in the street for the simple sin of voting. Showing an ID is worse than that. Again, one of the worst things I think a president has ever said. But to get on to the task at hand here, the Justice Department announced yesterday, that it has filed a lawsuit against the state of Arizona challenging voting restrictions imposed by House Bill 2492 in 2022, a recently enacted law that's set to take effect in January of 2023. The United States says that yada, 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 all the acts and all that sort of stuff. The House bill that is in question, 2492, erroneous documentary proof of requirement for certain federal elections constitutes a textbook violation of yada, 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 Assistant to the Attorney General says. Essentially, geez, this article is way too, I should have clipped through this. It's very in the weeds of this statute and this statute. Basically, what it is the Arizona state legislature said, hey, you need to show an ID to vote, especially in these federal elections. And the federal government is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't have that sort of authority over federal elections. They can, by the way. The Constitution specifically gives the entire voting process over to the states, not to be controlled by the federal government. But basically, the Attorney General or the Biden administration is suing Arizona because they don't like the law that says you have to show an ID to vote. Remember what was it called? The John Lewis Voting Rights Act? That's just what it's called. I'm not disparaging John Lewis in any way, shape, or form here. I disagreed with him a lot, but he seemed like an upstanding citizen. That's just my thought on John Lewis. The Voting Rights Act that passed through the federal government that was trying to get passed through the federal government, was probably unconstitutional on its face, and the Biden administration would have signed it, and the Supreme Court probably would have knocked it down, which is a whole other thing that we've talked about plenty on this show, of the fact that the federal government and the administration does things that are strictly unconstitutional for votes and then just lets the Supreme Court take the political hit for it. That's a different topic for a different time. But essentially, the Biden administration is going around trying to make sure that people don't have IDs when they vote. Why is that? Now, the argument obviously is, well, some people can't get an ID to vote. You know, this is probably not the stance or opinion I have. This is not the hill that I'm going to die on, this particular argument over this. I think there's plenty of arguments that show, hey, you got to be able to prove that you're a citizen. But one of these small things that I think in my head is, if you don't have the ability to get an ID, a free ID from the government, how do we really need your vote? Again, that is not an idea or an argument that I hold deep and close to my heart. That's just a thing that I think, and also think that if you can't prove that you're a citizen of the United States and therefore eligible to vote, you shouldn't be able to vote. I want to move on to this. This is, again, with the White House, and then we'll kind of lay off them for the rest of the program. Actually, no, they come in for a kick-in with the next story, too. This is from CNN. A CNN journalist is now reporting on, I should have worn my CNN Sucks shirt today. A CNN journalist is now reporting the fact that Democrats are unhappy with the Biden White House. Not only Republicans, by the way. Obviously, his approval rating would show, what is it, down somewhere in the mid-30s nowadays? Clearly has to include Democrats and independents in that. But a lot of Democrats in the circles that surround the D.C. area and the government working people, those Democrats are now upset with the Biden White House. Excuse me, check this out. Wow, excuse me again. From CNN, watch this. This is gnarly.
New CNN reporting this morning about an overwhelming sense of frustration among Democrats over what is being described as mismanagement inside the Biden administration. One member of Congress calls the White House rudderless, aimless, and hopeless.
So that is an interesting, again, idea from CNN. Now, the big long article talked about, there's Democrats that are this and Democrats that are that. The bottom line here, which I think is interesting on this, and I want to save this comment here. I saw a comment that I do want to bring on that I'm afraid that it's going to scroll up because you guys comment too fast. Not a bad thing at all, but I just want to make sure I get to this. So back to this, Democrats are upset with the Biden White House. In the article, it does say some pretty interesting things because, one, everybody's frustrated with the Biden White House. Now, that goes without saying. So there are people that are frustrated with the normal things, and by normal, I mean things that we're all upset about. Inflation, they're not really doing anything to cap that. The way that they're hyper-partisan, everything is making everything hyper-partisan is not, again, everybody agrees on those things. But what I also thought was really interesting in that article is there's a huge contingent on the super left of the Democratic Party that is basically saying, yeah, we don't think you're going far enough, Mr. President, which is scary to say the least. That's essentially what this is. This whole story is basically Democrats across the Democrat spectrum. The moderate Democrats are upset with the normal things that everybody's upset about, and the super, super liberal Democrats are upset that Joe Biden hasn't gone far enough, which is weird because Joe Biden is apparently ran as a moderate and then decided to turn into freaking Bernie Sanders the second he stepped into office. So there's that. There was a comment here that I really wanted to get to that said something along the lines of you need an ID to vote in every state. That's not true. So here's the thing. Wherever you're watching this, the laws could be different where you are. I live in Corruptifornia, also known as California. California, you don't need an ID to vote. So I understand that people from, different places like Texas or anywhere really in the Midwest who has reasonable voting laws probably is like, you need to vote. You need an ID to vote. That's not a thing that's ever been contested. But just in case you don't know this and you're watching from a state that has reasonable voting laws, in, I believe, New York, I believe in California, Washington, Oregon, a bunch of your super lefty states, you don't. Every time I go walk in to vote, I just kind of point on my name on a piece of paper and then I get my ballot. I could very easily point at somebody else's name and get their ballot. That's the big problem that we have here in a bunch of your super lefty states. So just so you know, in case you are confused, because you might be thinking that's a ridiculous way to do things. Yes, it is. It is correct. I want to get to this. This is actually kind of interesting too. Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, who is, I disagree with him a lot on policy, but he's very, very talented when it comes to talking. Like we talked about Jen Psaki earlier, disagree with her vehemently. I don't think she's telling the truth, and I think she's being completely dishonest. In the same way, Pete Buttigieg is probably very cynical. I don't agree with him on really anything, but he's very, very good at talking his way through things. This is Pete Buttigieg on Neil Cavuto's show on Fox News, talking about the airline shortage. So just to set this up really quick, it was a tough holiday weekend. Airlines canceled 1,200 flights on Friday, another 1,200 on Saturday, and about 300 on Sunday, and 225 on Monday. Airline chaos has been a thing that has been just so pervasive in the United States. Most of it is because there are a lack of pilots. Neil Cavuto asked the transportation secretary, hey, there's this really easy thing that we could do to try and stem the lack of pirates. Pirates are not flying airplanes. Pilots. And this is what Pete Buttigieg said. This was a suggestion, and this is what Pete Buttigieg said. Check this out.
I know you oversee the FAA as well. There are worker shortages there. But when it comes to pilots, and I think the retirement age remains 65, should it? Would you be for increasing that to increase the pool of available workers then who could fly these planes that oftentimes they're begging to find pilots?
Look, I'm much more interested in raising the bar on things like compensation and job quality than lowering the bar on something like safety. And when you get to these training hours, the retirement age and those things, those are fundamentally safety regulations. The United States of America should be able to have a robust aviation system without watering down our expectations on safety.
Do you think you compromise safety with an old, I'm sorry, Secretary, are you compromising safety with a pilot older than 65? Because a lot of people say 65 is the new 55, and we have a president who's almost 80. So what's the big deal if we went up a few more years?
Look, that regulation is there for safety reasons. I haven't seen any piece of information or data that would suggest that the reasoning has changed. And so I'm going to look at other steps that are not affecting safety.
All right, so he goes on and on about the safety thing. That is one of the biggest problems. Currently, pilots are retired. Commercial big airline pilots are required to retire at 65. Neil Cavuto making the argument, hey, we have a huge lack of pilots. I believe currently pilots from 2018 to now are being paid like 150% of what they were being paid in 2018. Basically, their salary has increased by half of what it was because of such a lack of pilots. Now, obviously, that is a pretty big problem. Airlines are, generally speaking, their biggest cost is their infrastructure, their actual plane itself and the debt on those planes, the gas themselves. But pilots are also a huge cost because they're very skilled employees that have a very skillful job and therefore need to be compensated as such. Pete Buttigieg is making the case of, hey, maybe we should just pay pilots more. Okay, well, is the federal government going to subsidize that? I don't think they should, and I don't really want them to. But what's the other option? Make tickets more expensive? Have you tried to buy a flight really anywhere? I just had a friend text this morning saying, hey, we're not going to this other place because flights are too expensive. Flights are insane right now. So is that the option? Make flights more expensive? Why don't we just raise the age? Because all of those pilots, raise the age to 70. Does anybody have a problem with that? I'm actually curious. In the comment section, do you have a problem raising the age for pilots to retire to 70? That, I don't know. That just seems like possibly a good idea. Maybe even it's just temporary. But a lot of airlines don't think they're going to be back on track until Labor Day. Yeah, that's about it on that. This is fun. This is very fun. Governor Gavin Newsom. This is why I wore my Corruptifornia t-shirt. Gavin Newsom, the lunkhead governor of California, is on vacation. Now, the funny part about this is that California tries to legislate from the woke side of the aisle. California is crazy when it comes to all of the things that you can and can't do just because people aren't promoting whatever, equity, diversity, all of that sort of stuff. California has banned travel to, I think it's like 35 states at this point. Originally, they were banning travel based on, I don't know, some sort of LGBTQ2 plus IA asterisks, all of the letters there. You get what I'm saying. Banned travel based on that sort of stuff. Now they're banning more travel to Roe versus Wade states, states that are making it harder to kill babies. Apparently, California doesn't like you traveling there. Now, that's not, when people say travel ban, California's issued a travel ban, that's not private citizens. What they're doing is effectively saying, hey, government employees cannot use California taxpayer dollars to go to any of these like 35 states. Having said that, Governor King Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is in Montana right now because he's vacationing in Montana, which is an unapproved state. Gavin Newsom is on vacation in Montana. His office has yet to disclose his location until now. Montana is one of the 22 states. Okay, so this is what it is. There's 22 states that California has banned state-funded travel due to anti-LGBTQ2+IA policies, which is also likely to institute an abortion ban. So effectively, California has said you can't travel to these states on state business. The reporter reporting this said, I'm told Gavin Newsom has not yet booked his return flight home, but will return to California over the weekend and be back in the office on Monday. I'm not opposed to politicians or governors or presidents, for that matter, taking a vacation. Everybody needs a break. Not going to knock him on being on vacation, even though I think he just went to Mexico like 2 months ago. And so I don't know. That's he seems to take a lot of vacation. But it is interesting that the Gavin's spokesperson saying that the California taxpayer wasn't paying for this, which, just FYI, California governor has a plane that they get around to the states. If you don't know that, there is no way that Gavin Newsom flies commercial when he's traveling around on gubernatorial business. That's not to say that he didn't fly commercial going to Montana, but I would be curious if he does book a commercial flight back to California, because again, he has to pay for it. Now, other things people might not know about Gavin Newsom is also freaking loaded. His family friends, I don't want to get into this whole diatribe about Gavin Newsom, but we're going to eventually, so maybe we'll get into a little bit of it right now. Gavin Newsom was family friends with the Getty family. Remember if you're not aware, the Getty oil family, big time money, and they gave him a small investment in his restaurant industry. Gavin Newsom owns a ton of wineries, a ton of restaurants, and is overwhelmingly rich. His wife, I believe her name is Jennifer, also comes from an exorbitantly rich family. So even if they have to pay for their own travel, I doubt they're paying for commercial travel. I think Governor, that's a fun name, Gavin Newsom, the Gavinator, is going to fly home whenever he wants to from the unapproved state of Montana. So there's that. Well, yeah, that's that. I just think it's funny that he's vacationing in a place that he will probably in the future say nobody should go to because of their strict abortion policy or LGBTQ, whatever. That brings us to this. There's no warning for this. Actually, there wasn't a warning in the beginning. I'm going to give you a warning. If you don't want to see something kind of gross, very weird, and definitely not something you're used to a politician doing, go ahead and turn off the stream right now. If you've been watching this whole time, that's totally okay. You're allowed to turn off the stream. You don't need to watch this. But if you'd like to see how far we've fallen as a society that our politicians are doing this thing, go ahead and get some popcorn. This is a state senator in Rhode Island who posted a TikTok of her upside down twerking for votes. And don't worry, it's not just the picture. We're going to play the video maybe even a couple times. Watch this, possibly avert your eyes. Maybe that's something that you feel that you need to do, but it's coming, like it or not. Watch this.
Vote Senator Mack.
At the very end, a call to action: vote Senator Mack. That is, I believe her name is Tiara. Let me see. Oh shoot, did I not put her thing in here? I believe her name is her name is Senator Mack. She's a senator from Rhode Island, and apparently decided that twerking, here we go. The twerking senator from District 6 of Rhode Island, state senator, decided that that was going to be a good way to get people to vote for her, putting that on TikTok. She definitely got attention. We're talking about it here. Tucker talked about it last night. Yeah, it's an interesting way to gather votes and get voters to the polls. But here's what I thought was freaking hilarious. She retweeted, I went on her Twitter, because clearly if anybody has any sort of backlash to anything you do, you have to backlash them back on Twitter. She retweeted somebody tweeting about her video. This is, brace yourselves, this is bizarre. That, first of all, can we all agree that this is not normal? A state senator doing this is weird and not normal. Julie says, disgusting senator. Colleen says, unacceptable for a senator. Now, just remember, state senator, not a U.S. senator. She's not one of the 100 people in the U.S. Senate that is the most deliberative body in the world. Terry says, nope, just nope. But here's the thing. We all agree that that's not something that is becoming of really any politician, let alone a state senator. That doesn't matter what politician you are. If you're running for dog catcher of your local county, don't post a video like that. But here's what somebody tweeted, and she retweeted. The trolls aren't coming for @run something candidate Mac, District 6, which is, I believe, Tiara Mack, Senator Mack. They're not coming for Senator Mack because of a video. They're coming for her because she's a young queer black leader and a fierce champion of reproductive rights. We've got her back. Chip in for her re-election now. That's it. You're right. That's why we did it. That's why you're watching. That's why people are commenting. That's why I brought it on the screen. It's not because of her twerking is ridiculous in nature. That's not the reason at all. The reason is because she's a young, black, queer, fierce champion of reproduction rights. I figured she was young. I could see that she was black. I did not know that she was queer until I read this tweet, and I did not know that she is a fierce champion of reproduction rights, although I probably could have guessed. So that's it. Yeah, if you do something ridiculous and somebody calls you out on that ridiculous thing, it's not because of the ridiculous thing that you did, it's because you're part of the minority communities. Whatever. Yeah, that's it. And on that note, on that bright and shining note, we will see you tomorrow. We appreciate you tuning in on wherever you're watching this via YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. If you didn't already during the entire show, would really appreciate it if you click the little like button or engage with the post in some way. Do the little emoji thing, and maybe it makes you laugh. Maybe we make you laugh and have a good time. Maybe it makes you angry. Just click the little emoji like button thing, or shoot us a comment, or share it to your friends and family if you feel so inclined. But really, really appreciate you doing that. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts, just @JOBOB, the Jobob. It's okay. This has become a running joke for those of you who stick around long enough. The Facebook on this Chiron that we bring up is wrong and has been wrong for about 8 months now. Still haven't gotten around to changing it. Just type in JOBOB on Facebook. You'll be able to find me. I believe the @ is @thejobob, no show at the end of it. Also on Twitter. Getting snarkier on Twitter. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for me, but we'll see. But appreciate you tuning in each and every day. Tomorrow we will have some stuff. I believe Joe Biden is slated to do some stuff today, so we'll bring that to you tomorrow. But anything else happens over the course of the next 24 hours, we will be on top of it and bring it to you tomorrow. See you then, same time, same place. God bless America.